Hi, this is section 2.1. Starting back here. I do things differently. You've probably figured that out by now. I went ahead and I filled out most of the notes. Some of these notes you're going to want to have because the Hawks will want to know some specifics, like they're going to want to know, some of the things that's written about absolute value. They're going to want to know some of the things that are written about opposites, some of the things that are written about inequalities. When we get to section 2.2, they're going to want to know what an additive inverse is. So you're going to need some of the things that are written down in blue, but there are places where I was like, oh, we're doing this totally different way, because I am very serious about we've got to get through this quickly. So we're going to concentrate on getting you through with the calculator more than anything else. So some of this is just introduction to integers, and you need to know what an integer is. You need to know what makes an integer different from a regular number, and you need to know that it's more than just having a negative there that makes it an integer, because positive numbers are integers too, but they're a little bit different from a regular number. So, whole numbers and their opposites are what integers are. It's a group of numbers. It doesn't start at -3, it goes all the way back. Oh, that's what those dots are, all the way back. I just started my numbers at -3, and it'll go up to a +3 and keep on going all the way up as far as you can go. But it does include the number 0. 0 is neither positive nor negative, like I wrote down here. Feel free to pause this to write all this blue stuff down. Like I said, you might need it for Hawks. Don't know that you will, but just in case you do. The opposite of a positive integer is a negative integer. So the opposite, that's what we call it when it's out in front of the parentheses. The opposite of a +2 is a -2. The opposite of a +7 is a -7. The opposite of a -7 is a +7. You can take the opposite of a negative as well. The opposite of a -2 is a +2. The opposite of 0 is still 0 because 0 is neither positive nor negative. You can't take the opposite of it. It won't fold. Basically, you're folding this on itself. So -3 will match up with 3, -2 matches up with 2, -1 matches up with 1, but 0 won't fold on anything except for itself, because that's where it folds at. When we talk about inequalities, this is read as is less than. The is part lets you know that it's in place of your equal sign. So it'll be read as is less than is greater than, which tells me they're going to start getting you into equations and inequalities. Is less than or equal to is greater than or equal to. That's what the little line underneath is. Tells you it could be equal to that number. Absolute value is the distance away from 0 that the number is. So if I have the absolute value of 2, that's what absolute value looks like. It's the great big bars. The absolute value of 2 is saying on a number line, 2 is how far away from 0? Well, it's 2 spots away from 0. So the absolute value of 2 is 2 because it's 2 away from 0. However, the absolute value of a number can never be negative. That's why whenever you see the absolute value of -2, everyone would always say, oh, that's a +2. Well, when you look at -2 on a number line, the distance away from that, from 0, is also 2. It's 2 little spots away from 0. That's because distance can never be negative. That's what makes it never be negative, is because distance is never negative. Absolute value is a measure of distance, and that's why it's never negative. Now, we get to where we just say, oh, because the absolute value bars, we just take the negative and make it a positive, and that's all we do to it. But the reason why is because it's distance. And sometimes you have to go back to these original reasons why in order to understand things later on. That's the original reason why. You need to understand the absolute value is a grouping symbol. And the reason you need to know that is because it falls in the order of operations as a grouping symbol, which means you'd have to do all the stuff inside of it before you could take the absolute value. You got to get it down to one number before you can take that absolute value. Can't be just be changing everything that's inside of it to a positive because you feel like it. It's got to be just one number before you can take that absolute value. Okay, so now let's look at these. They want us to change this and simplify the expression. So we're supposed to get a one number answer. That's what simplifying expressions is, getting a one number answer. So not necessarily containing absolute value, that's just for the second two because this one doesn't have any absolute value to it. So the opposite of negative 10 is a positive 10. Here, I take the absolute value of 6. 6 is 6 away from 0. And then the opposite of 6 is negative 6. Do you understand that the 6, only the stuff inside, is what I'm taking the absolute value of, not the stuff outside. So I don't take the absolute value of that, just the stuff on the inside. Over here, I have the absolute value of negative 3, which is a positive 3. So now I have a negative positive 3. So the opposite of positive 3 is a negative 3. Now, a lot of people are like, this looks like a minus sign to me. How do I know when it's a minus sign and when it's a negative sign? It's always going to look like a minus sign because there are typeset issues that books have. Books can't usually make a little teeny tiny negative up top like we can when we write. So books are going to always make it look like it's a minus sign. That's why they generally put those parentheses around it to let you know that it's really a negative sign. That's why on your calculator, the negative key has parentheses around it to let you know that it's a negative sign and not a minus sign. The minus has no parentheses, the negative does. That's how you know which one's a negative. Now you try this one. Make sure you pause the video so that you know the answers to the